So I am starting another recipe today, and this time it's going to be a variation of the roasted eggplant and pepper Puttanesca sauce in the all-new Ball Book of Canning. So this recipe calls for 2 pounds of eggplant, and I am not a fan of eggplant. Can't stand it. Every time I've ever had it, it tasted bitter, and I'm not going to go through the time of making this recipe. Just reading it looks like it is kind of a little time intensive. There's a lot of roasting and then the dicing and cooking down and all of that. So anyway, I'm not going to waste my time doing that and then putting in a veggie that I know I don't like. So what I did was I got on a Facebook group and asked their opinion on subbing out 2 pounds of mushrooms for the 2 pounds of eggplant, and got both answers. One sent me to somebody sent me to a site that said that you can go ahead and leave them out, but they don't suggest subbing in another veggie. Somebody else said, well, it's a veggie for a veggie. If you do poundage for poundage or cups for cups, then it should be fairly interchangeable. So I'm debating whether I'm going to put in 2 pounds of mushrooms for the 2 pounds of eggplant. I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm veering towards adding the mushrooms just because I think mushrooms are great in pasta sauces. The other thing is this recipe in the book, the original, it did not add balsamic vinegar to this recipe. And if you look up the recipe online now, it adds balsamic vinegar, a half a cup. And I think that's to help with the acidity. It is kind of an optional thing, but if I'm going to use the mushrooms instead of the eggplant, I'm thinking that I'm going to veer towards adding that balsamic vinegar just to make sure that it stays acidic enough. The other option, which somebody said, I think they thought that it was going to be a pressure canned recipe, was you're pressure canning it, so does it make any difference? And they're right. You would look up, the longest time basically for the veggie that takes the longest time, and then pressure can it for that. So that's also what I'm thinking of doing, is maybe possibly just pressure canning it instead of water bathing. But before I even do any of that, I need to cut up my veggies, and this recipe has you roasting them in the oven, just like cut in half. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and just, since I have the cutting board out and getting everything ready, I'm gonna go ahead and just dice everything up and just roast it already all diced up. That way more of the surface of the veggies gets that caramelized, yummy flavor to them. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting up it calls for 3 red peppers. I bought a Costco bag, and I don't know if all Costco's have these, but ours comes with 2 orange, 2 yellow, and 2 red peppers. And so I just picked out 2 of the red peppers, and I'm going to use an orange pepper in place of the red. It calls for a 3.5 ounce jar of capers, and we'll drain those, and so I'm going to have to measure out 3.5 ounces because this has 4 ounces in it. And then it calls for 3 large onions, so I'm going to be getting those cut up and probably quartering my mushrooms. I washed them last night and let them soak for a little bit, got them nice and clean. They've drained this morning. And so I'm going to get those. I think I'm going to quarter those because with the eggplant recipe, it calls for 2 pounds to be cut into 1-inch cubes. So that's where we're at right now. I'm going to get busy and get to work. It's a double. Cute little butt. All right, got the mushrooms, the onions, the peppers, and I'm going to stick them in the oven now. And the book says to bake for 400 for 30 minutes or until they're golden brown. And the onion and bell pepper are crisp tender. So we'll go for 30 minutes. I'll take a look at them, and then I'll probably stir them around, and honestly probably have to put them in for maybe another 10-15 minutes just to make sure that as much of them get roasted as possible. So I'm going to set the timer, and I'll bring you back when they are out of the oven. So our veggies are done roasting, and I did end up roasting them for about an hour and 15 minutes, actually. It was quite a while. When they first went in, they were just letting off a ton of liquid. And then the second half hour, they started getting to where you could see some color on them, which was what I wanted. So I can see why the book has it, it asks to keep them whole, just because I think you probably don't get as much of the moisture out, because there was quite a bit coming out. I'm going to scrape this off so I don't lose all that good stuff around the edges there. Let's see, what else? Oh, something I was going to tell you is I ended up messaging the the fresh preserving people about the recipe, asking if I could sub out safely the mushrooms for the eggplant. And they actually told me no. They said that it's best to just leave the eggplant out altogether. Otherwise, follow the recipe as written. So, based on that, and based on me, of course, wanting to can correctly and safely and not put my family in harm's way, I am going to be pressure canning this. So, when I get ready to do that, I'll set everything up. You'll see me just like you usually do. But anyway, in here I have 6 pounds of tomatoes. Now, half of the tomatoes are fresh. My mom had a bunch in her freezer that she gave me, and so I ran them through the tomato press and got all the seeds and the skins out. And I actually took because they were frozen, the skins came off very easily off of the tomatoes. And I put those in my dehydrator. So I've seen multiple times where people dehydrate their skins and their seeds, that pulp that's left over, and make tomato powder out of it. So that's what I'm going to be trying this go round. So they've been drying about 5 hours. And when I checked them, they were still kind of tacky. So I have them going again. But anyway, there's the 6 pounds that the recipe calls for in there. And then, let's see, it wants us to add all of the peppers and onions. And then it calls for 2 cups of dry red wine. I don't know what a dry red wine is. I've only had one red wine Sorry, I wanted to grab my measuring cup. I've only ever had one red wine that I liked. I honestly am not a red wine fan. I'm hoping that I like this one. Will it show up on there? A friend of mine, when we went out to dinner one night, I think it was Lambrusco that she had ordered for us, and it was actually really tasty. So I haven't tried it yet. I probably should, but it doesn't really matter. It's a red wine. I have it, so I'm using it. And whatever's left over, I'll probably have with dinner tonight. So I'm going to put in the 2 cups. Oh, there goes the dehydrator. So it's been in probably for a total of 10 hours now. Oop, that's a little bit shy. There we go. Put that in. Oh, that's really going to give it a nice color too. Let's see. Oh, it calls for the Kalamata olives, and I had forgotten I was going to chop those up with my chopper. I had forgotten about that. And then I have my capers. That's the name. I don't honestly ever cook with these, so in fact, I was going to try, I think I'm going to grab one and taste it because I've never... Whoa! Ho, ho. That is sour. That's an interesting flavor. Kind of, actually does kind of remind me of an olive, to be honest with you. Well, we'll see how that tastes in the sauce. Let's see. So I need to, it calls for 1.5 cups of the Kalamata olives, so I'll get those. A tablespoon of anchovies. So I'll get those. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and chop those up and get that ready, and I'll bring you back when I'm putting them in the pot. I think I have everything ready here. So let's see. We have the tomatoes, the mushrooms, onions, red bell peppers, the wine. There it calls for 1.5 cups of the Kalamata olives. So I chopped 1.5 cups of those. I'll get those in there. Kind of looks like little chunks of meat, those olives in there. Wow, funky. Okay. Let's see. Then we have a tablespoon of anchovy paste or chopped anchovies. And the recipe says that it is optional. However, I will tell you that every recipe that I looked up with this called for anchovies. And they said it just gives it something, but it's not like it tastes like fish. So I had a thing of anchovies in my pantry, and I smashed those up, and it was the perfect amount for this. So that must be the usual amount that people use. I don't know. Let's see, 2 teaspoons of salt. And I have my Himalayan pink salt. I'm very curious with all of the capers and the olives how salty this is going to be. But maybe with the tomatoes it kind of evens out. I don't know. 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. And 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Six garlic cloves. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, Okay, so it also calls for a 1/2 cup of balsamic vinegar. This is gonna be interesting. It doesn't smell bad. So I have my 1/2 cup over here somewhere. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Okay, let's grab this and the balsamic vinegar. I was debating whether or not to put it in because the original recipe doesn't call for it, and somebody said that they thought that it tasted too vinegary. But again, this is one that it seems like every recipe that I was reading about had balsamic vinegar in it. So, you know, maybe what I'll do, maybe what I'll do is I'll measure out a tablespoon for every pint. That might be a good way to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's pretty close to a 1/2 cup. Not quite a half, I don't think, but there we go. Because that's how many pints this recipe is supposed to make. We shall see. Whew, I really do smell that vinegar. Of course, I have both of those sitting right next to me. All right, I am going to get this going on the heat. I haven't turned that up yet. So I'm going to get that going, and I'm going to scrape out all the goods over here, and I'll bring you back. All right, there it is, all done. It's nice and warmed up. And let me tell you, this tastes amazing. It is not anything like what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be really sour and really kind of pickly tasting because of the olives and the capers, but it is not. It is kind of is sweet, I think. It has a nice sweet flavor to it. It's delicious. I told my daughter I think I like this better than my regular marinara sauce. She disagrees. She thinks it's just okay, but I think that's tasty. So what I'm going to do now is get my canner ready, and I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and pressure can this, and I'm going to pressure can it for the time for the mushrooms, and that would be 45 minutes for pints. So I'm going to start jarring it up, and I will bring you along. Let me get everything set up.